asked the delighted Bart, and so he became acquainted with Bonhoeffer. This was the young student with an insight into Luther's forthright realism, who was later to expound so clearly that other paradoxical and often misunderstood statement of Luther's: "Sin boldly, but believe and rejoice in Christ more boldly still." At the age of 21 he presented his doctor's thesis, a dogmatic study of the communion of saints, and in his later inaugural dissertation, Act and Being, he defined the position and significance of dialectical theology. In 1928 he was a vicar in Barcelona, and in 1929 he was back in Berlin. After his admission to the theological faculty in 1930, he was sent to Union Theological Seminary in New York for a year. He spoke of it as famed and esteemed as the stronghold of criticism in America, a place of free discussion made possible by the civic courage peculiar to Americans and the lack of any sort of officialism in personal relations. Here he learned to know both the Niebuhrs. He was also fascinated by Negro spirituals and the struggle of the Negro for equality. In later years, when the walls went up around Germany, he introduced his students to these songs. Eberhard Bethge, Bonhoeffer's closest friend, now a pastor to students in Berlin and editor of his posthumous works, and to whom the writer of this essay is indebted for its substance, writes, "We hummed Swing Low, Sweet Chariot 20 years before the radio and concert halls made it familiar here." On returning to Berlin, he began his lectures in systematic theology and immediately gathered about him a group of students. His first book, Creation and Fall, grew out of his lectures, a theological exposition of the first 3 chapters of Genesis. In addition, he served as pastor to students in the technical school in Charlottenburg, where his services were crowded. Then came the fateful year, 1933. In February, Bonhoeffer delivered a lecture broadcast over the Berlin radio in which he flayed the German public for its hankering after a leader who would inevitably become a misleader so long as he did not clearly refuse to become the idol of the led. The broadcast was cut off before he had finished. When it became apparent that Hitler, the idol, had succeeded, he accepted a call to be the pastor of 2 German congregations in London, for he refused to have any part in the German Christian compromise with the Nazi government. In England, he formed a close friendship with Bishop Bell of Chichester, and became one of the foremost interpreters to the world outside of events in the German churches. Then, while preparing to visit Gandhi in India through the meditation of C.F. Andrews to pursue an interest in pacifism, he received a call from the confessing church to take charge of an illegal, clandestine seminary for the training of young pastors in Pomerania. He went back at once. In 1935, he moved to Zingst, and from there to Finkenwalde, near Stettin, where he shared a common life in emergency-built houses with 25 vicars. This was life together, the life of the Christian community, which is described and documented with biblical insights in the book Gemeinsames Leben, 1938, here presented in translation. In this period he also wrote Nachfolge, published in England and the United States as The Cost of Discipleship. These 2 works are the distillation of his fundamental message, what it means to live with Christ. Shortly after publishing another brief work, Das Gebetbuch der Bibel, the prayer book of the Bible, an introduction to the Psalms, which carries forward the ideas expressed in Chapter 2 of this book, he was forbidden to write or publish, and the underground seminary was closed by the Gestapo. But already Bonhoeffer was deeply involved in the events of his dictator-dominated country. Through Hans von Dohnanyi, the husband of his sister, Christel, he learned something of the crisis that was centering in General Fritsch and the secret plans for the overthrow of Hitler being made by General Beck and others. The man who felt all the force of the pacifist position and weighed the cost of discipleship concluded in the depths of his soul that to withdraw from those who were participating in the political and military resistance would be irresponsible cowardice and flight from reality. Not, as his friend Bethge says, that he believed that everybody must act as he did, but from where he was standing he could see no possibility.